If you think that was iced tea, you're wrong. Welcome. This is Check That Book, a special place on the internet where we get acquainted with the most disturbing books ever written. Some nasty, truly nasty pieces of literature, or some truly psychologically astonishing masterpieces. Well, today's subject is not really one of those. It's neither, actually, in my not so humble opinion. This one belongs in a separate category, if I may. I am a book lover, yeah, and a disturbing book lover as well, but this one, oh boy. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my first video on Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom. Yeah, where I also quote some of it so that you can get the whiff of this thing. Yes, and this manuscript, it's available on the internet. You can read it free of charge if you know where to look. This is some truly unpleasant stuff written in 1785 while his imprisonment. He Google Marquis de Sade. For those of you who don't know, brief description: de Sade, sadism came from there. You want to know why? Do your own research. I'm not the right person to give lectures on that, although maybe I could, taking my educational background to account, but I'm not really interested in that. I don't think, first of all, this has been talked about and discussed and laid out so many times already that I don't feel the need to do it again. Besides, there's plenty of truly decent channels on YouTube where you can easily check the subject out. Marquis de Sade and his background. I don't think me babbling about him is necessary. As you might have understood from the title as well, today we are going to briefly discuss the key differences between the 120 Days of Sodom book, well, actually pretty much just a manuscript, and its infamous film adaptation by Pasolini. Oh, damn. By the way, you guys, I'm not encouraging anyone to drink anything. This might as well be iced tea, so let's pretend it is. I don't feel cool filming with a glass. I usually always have a glass or a mug on my desk because I need to stay hydrated. I speak and babble a lot. I keep on yapping, and I really need to take control of the situation with me yapping. I mean, it's useful, but not always. No, seriously, if you're here, then you probably know what you're in for. We discuss disturbing literature, and in these little fun episodes, I also bring up the most known film adaptations, and, well, arguably, by an Italian filmmaker. One of my favorites, actually. He's also a poet. He seems to have been a pretty clever man. Paolo Pasolini made an adaptation of this sick work, and you most likely, if you've been wandering around internet, you most likely have heard or seen some snippets of the film. It's infamous, it's out there, much like a Serbian film, which I mentioned in my very first video on this channel, a Serbian film of literature, which in my opinion, I mean, was it or was it not The Groomer? Check it out. But this one, yes, this movie is infamous. It's still out there. It's so controversial that it hurts my eye. Just one eye. But let's get to the key differences. I can't believe I'm going to talk about this again. So, The book is set in a secluded castle in 18th century France, where four wealthy libertines indulge in extreme acts of violence and abuse. Fun times. The story is a product of Enlightenment era France, heavily infused with the period's aristocratic decadence, actually. Whilst the film, well, Pasolini relocates the setting to 1944 fascist Italy, which sounds like an even more fun time, if you ask me. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Specifically, we are dragged into the town of Salo, which was under fascist puppet regime at the time. I'm not sure, but I believe that by setting the story in this historical context, Pasolini aligns the depravity of the story with the real life horrors of fascism. I'm not sure if I should censor this word, but if this video gets uploaded, I'll re-upload, don't worry. De Sade's novel is a philosophical exploration of absolute freedom. It questions limits of cruelty, sexual indulgence, and human desires. Pasolini, however, he uses the story to make a broader political statement, I believe, about the corrupting nature of absolute power. Specifically, well, fascist authoritarianism. He saw fascism as a systematic violation of individual autonomy and freedom, while de Sade explores nihilism for its own sake. If we talk about narrative and structure, well, in de Sade's case, it's kind of like unfinished, right? He wrote this whilst in imprisonment, and by the way, he died without knowing whether his work survived the fire or not. What fire? I'm not gonna go deeper into it, but do your research. I mean, it's a fun read, the biography of de Sade. So yeah, he didn't know what would happen of his work, whether it will ever see the light of day, and it did. And now we question whether this was in fact a good thing. But well, I never personally, as an author myself, I kind of want to understand him, if that makes sense. Does that make me weird? I'm trying my best to, honestly, because I try to be supportive towards all of the authors, but I can't find it in me to be supportive towards a cruel, sadistic son of a bitch. I'm sorry, it's just hard. And one part of me wants to say that, you know what? I deeply regret it. I regret that his work is alive and out there, and so much so that people would pay a lot of money for it to see the actual real manuscript or to go watch a film adaptation of it, albeit the film adaptation, like I've mentioned, focuses a wee bit on a different, era and slightly different subject matter. But the core is the same. We have the same depravity and violence, ultra violence, I would call it. So, no. But Pasolini preserves the segmented structure, dividing the film into four concrete segments. Oh, God. I'm not going to name them, just watch the film. Fair warning, if you don't like what you're seeing here, well, you most likely won't enjoy the film. But his adaptation is far more cinematic and linear than de Sade's dense descriptions. Pasolini arranges the acts in a way that serves a coherent visual and dramatic arc. And yes, at the same time, the book is kind of clinical and detached. Like I said, it was the only version. It was his manuscript that survived, and I read the manuscript, obviously. It's kind of philosophical, and I myself enjoy a good lecture on philosophy or a good debate, but here it's just he kind of tries to be this aristocracy driven, how to put it correctly, he speaks of the depravity as if it was something completely natural. He's so chill about it all in his writing. As a matter of fact, like I said, he must have been involved in many of these cases himself, I'm pretty sure, no doubt about that. It's a case study of a truly sick person, and I'm not sure that I would be interested in diving deeper. I just don't see why it's necessary. Well, yes, I get it. Many psychoanalytics have done this before, and we've gotten our fair share of results after psychoanalyzing de Sade. As I mentioned, the book was left incomplete, so the ultimate conclusion of the libertines' atrocities and the fates of all the characters are largely left to speculation. Although de Sade's draft hints at escalating cruelty, but lacks a conclusive ending. Pasolini concludes the film with a devastating, visually explicit sequence in which the libertines sit back and observe as the captives are tortured and murdered, and all of that truly disgusting, sheer depravity. The libertines, instead of remaining detached as they do in the novel, are actively complicit, reinforcing Pasolini's message on the dehumanizing effects of fascism. So there we have it. And I think that's a job well done in Pasolini's fashion. I've seen most of his works, and I always end up thinking too much. To be fair, I'm curious, how the hell did they get all of those actors to do the stuff that they do on screen? As much as I heard, it was supposed to be quite a fun time, in a good way, and most of them didn't really know how the end product would look like. So, in this regard, I kind of want to applaud the film crew, but at the same time, shouldn't you have told your actors what they're in for? I don't know. I wasn't there. So basically, the novel was intended as a private, extreme exploration of de Sade's darkest fantasies and philosophical inquiries. But Pasolini's Salo was a deliberate political statement intended to shock audiences and provoke thought about the horrors of fascism and the abuse of power. It was released as a public work of art, and criticism leading to intense controversy, and in some countries, outright bans. This film is banned, oh yes. I think Pasolini wanted to use shock as his way to jolt viewers into recognizing the moral degradation he saw in society, particularly in modern consumerist culture, which I agree with. Which brings me to my next topic, and it's a perfect moment to once again introduce you briefly to my own book, Misanthropically Inclined. Misanthropically Inclined is a poetry collection written throughout the decade on various subjects, including some philosophical thoughts, not like de Sade. And yes, hopefully you will find it entertaining. There is an ebook available, link for which will be in the description below. I understand that prices are a bit high, but unfortunately everything is a bit high today, and I cannot properly do my work justice. I cannot, only you can, viewers, readers, but we started off with what we started off in order for me to cover the goddamn bills. So yes, check it out. Misanthropically Inclined is available in both ebook version and hardback version, which has pictures in it. So let's summarize this shit. Whilst the 120 Days of Sodom and Salo, the 120 Days of Sodom, are a basic narrative structure of extreme cruelty and depravity, violence, and sexual sadism, and all of that disgusting stuff. Yes, I've mentioned in my first video about this particular book. Be prepared. I mean, there's everything. There's crap eating, there is a lot of shit and piss, there's all sorts of disgusting sexual acts that if they arouse you, then I suggest you see a professional as soon as possible. Also, about the victims, real quick, Pasolini humanizes them more. We see their emotions, we are introduced to them, not in depth, of course, but unlike in the Sade's novel, where he really doesn't give a crap about the victims, Pasolini is more humane towards them. So, we explore this libertine philosophy in both the book and the movie, and it doesn't convince me in either. Once upon a time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like disturbing content, consider giving this video a boost in the form of an erect thumb, and make sure to subscribe for more. Make sure to check out my book as well. If you please, I'd be honored. And I will talk to you as soon as possible. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Till soon. Goodbye.